Hello, welcome everybody to our session in psychology today. I do apologize that the room is too small for all of you and that we can't have chairs for all of you. I'm sorry about that. I hope that we will be entertaining enough so that it's not too much of a pain. My name is Holger Wiese. I'm an associate professor here in the department, and I am in Durham for, I think, about 9 years now. So by now I should know a little bit about the department, and I hope I can tell you a little bit about it, and I hope that I can also answer your questions. Just to give you a brief overview of what we're going to do, we will today talk about the following things. I will briefly talk about what psychology is, what we here in Durham understand under the term psychology. I will give you an overview over the courses that we offer here. I will then talk a little bit about teaching and learning in the Durham course at Durham University. I will talk about employability and the application process. We have two student ambassadors here, and you will also hear from our undergrad students giving you their perspective of what it's like to study with us. What is psychology? This is a definition from a textbook from Michael Eising, 2004, and it says psychology is a science in which behavioral and other evidence is used to understand the internal processes leading people and members of other species to behave as they do. So there are two things here in that definition that I would like you to notice. Psychology is a science, and science has something to do with numbers, and psychology is about behavior, right? So what psychology is psychology is trying to understand and explain behavior, and we're trying to understand and explain behavior, not by sitting back and reflecting about it, as some other people might do, but we're trying to use scientific methods. That is, we come up with theories, and then we test these theories using scientific methodology. So we're running experiments, we might be using questionnaires or whatever, and on the basis of the data that we gather, we test whether our theoretical ideas are true or not, and whether these theoretical ideas can explain behavior, yes or no. So when we say psychology is about behavior, so what could be things that influence behavior? Well, lots of things can influence behavior. Lots of things could be potential reasons why people behave in a particular way. It could be a specific stimulus that makes you do something. If you drive a car and all of a sudden you see a red light, you might want to stop your car. That's a specific visual stimulus that you see. Your recent or historical experience might influence what you do. If you have tried something in the past and it worked, you might want to try it again. Or if you tried something in the past and it didn't work, you might change your behavior. Your genetic makeup might influence what you do. Your physiological system might influence what you do. If you're tired and hungry, you might behave differently relative to when you're not tired and hungry. Your cognitive system might influence your behavior. Your social environment will influence your behavior, right? You behave differently amongst your friends relative to your colleagues at work, your teachers at school, or whoever else. And finally, your personal characteristics will influence how you behave, your personality, your intelligence, and many other things. This is a long list. It doesn't mean that this is an exhaustive list. There might be other factors that influence behavior as well. I'm just trying to give you an idea that this is a really, really broad list, because these factors are actually also quite different. So psychology necessarily is a broad discipline. If we want to understand behavior and all these things, plus probably other things as well, influence behavior, you need a broad discipline. You need to have experts who are experts in many, many different fields, in more biologically oriented fields, in more socially oriented fields, and everything in between. And I think one of the great things about the Durham department is that we actually have that here. The Durham department is actually a quite broad department. We have experts in many, many different sub-areas of psychology. We have people who are more interested in social aspects, we have people who are more interested in biological aspects, and everything in between. Right. So what do we offer to students? We have two single honors courses, the classic Bachelor of Science in Psychology, C800, and we have a BSc in Psychological and Behavioral Science. I will talk a little bit more about the difference between these two things, but just as a brief first thing, you probably will have an idea of what psychology is. Behavioral science has a slightly more applied angle. It comes from behavioral economics, and it is kind of applied social psychology that aims at changing people's behavior, for instance, with public health messaging, with things within big companies, etc. I'll talk a little bit about the difference later. We have additional joint honors programs, more on that on the next slide, and all of these programs come with the option of a year abroad or a placement year. That would mean that after your second year studying in Durham, you do your placement year or your year abroad, and then you come back after your year somewhere else to Durham, where you finish your degree by doing your third year, which is then your fourth year in total. But everything that you get into your degree, everything that is relevant in your degree is what we teach here in Durham. You don't have to decide about whether you want to do that at the point that you apply. You can actually get still have a year abroad or placement year option into your degree after your first year. Yes. So these were single honors programs. The university also offers combined degrees, non-single honors degrees. You can study psychology in combination with other sciences in the natural science program. If you wanted to do psychology with biology, or psychology and math, or whatever else, you can study psychology with anthropology, with philosophy, and with education studies. I should say, I'll come back to that. You will get a better idea of what that means in a second, but I should say that all of these have the option of being BPS accredited. The Natural Sciences program is definitely possible, slightly more tricky. Everything else is more or less automatically BPS accredited. You will know what I'm talking about in a second. Which is actually now. Coming back to the single honors degrees, C800, Psychology, and the Behavioral Sciences one, what do these courses look like? Levels 1 and 2, so the first 2 years, are the basis for, what I just mentioned, BPS accreditation. The BPS is the British Psychological Society. Having a degree that is accredited by the BPS allows you to go into psychological professions. So it is something that you want for a psychology degree. It's definitely something that you want to have when you study psychology. That means that you need to cover all the basic fundamental subdisciplines within psychology to cover a broad range of knowledge. You need that for your BPS accreditation. And we do that in the first 2 years. So you have a number of core modules that cover the subdisciplines within psychology, as well as research methods and statistics. What are these core modules, or these main subdisciplines? Cognitive psychology, biological, social psychology, developmental psychology, and individual difference, clinical psychology, I should say. That means that during these first 2 years, when we cover all these basic modules, there is not a lot for you to choose. Right? This is all the stuff that you have to learn, that you have to have in your degree for your BPS accreditation, and you need your BPS accreditation. So what we will do here in Durham is we spend 2 years, more or less. There is a slight exception to that, which I'll come to in a second. We will spend the first 2 years teaching everything that you need for your BPS accreditation. Which means that there's not much for you to choose. This is what you need to do. There's one exception for that. You have one elective module in year 1. And this elective module, you can choose a module in psychology. You can, for instance, choose a careers module in psychology, which is elective, which you don't have to do. It's not BPS. It's not necessary for your BPS accreditation. Or you can pick something from a different department. You might want to learn a language. You might want to study astrophysics, whatever. And you can do that in your elective module in year 1. As long as it doesn't clash with your main psychology timetable, you're relatively free to choose what you want, and as long as the other department doesn't have any specific restrictions on this module, right? The astrophysics people might say you need an A star in math, and you might not have that. There's not much we can do about that. Now I said in years 1 and 2, there's actually not much for you to choose. That changes dramatically in year 3. In your third year of study, you're more or less free to choose what you want. And this has year 3 has 2 main components. There's a dissertation module that is worth 40 credits. That means it's about a third of the credits for the whole year. And there are additional modules that you can choose for the other 80 credits. Your dissertation project is your own research project that you conduct together, probably with some other students or with a friend or whoever else, and you decide which kind of area you want to go to, where the research is, what kind of research you're interested in. And in many cases what happens is that you pick an area where somebody here in the department is actually doing their own research, and you can contribute to the research that people are actually doing, which in many cases is actually world-leading, cutting-edge research in a specific field. You can actually contribute to that. Within limits, I would say, but you can actually contribute to that by going into the area that you're interested in. If you're interested in developmental psychology, you want to work with children, you can do that here. If you're interested in virtual reality, you can do research on virtual reality. If you're interested in cognitive neuroscience and you want to do EEG research, you can do EEG research. All these things are possible given that you are interested, and given that you have maybe over the years before you actually start your dissertation project, maybe in some cases developed a certain interest and expertise in a particular area. But these are all things that are possible here. In addition to your dissertation, you have, as I already mentioned, optional modules that you can freely choose, and they are worth 80 credits. Just examples. In psychology might be sports and exercise psychology, atypical development, clinical neuropsychology, human evolutionary psychology. Examples from the behavioral science route could be evaluating evidence of behavioral science, business and economic psychology, behavior change, professional skills. So that might give you also a little bit of a hint what the different emphasis is in behavioral science and in psychology. This is more about behavior change and about business, the business side of things. This is more basic, research-oriented, probably. I should say that because both programs, both the behavioral science and the psychology program, are BPS accredited, they're not much different in the first 2 years, right? We said the first 2 years are, we designed them to cover everything that you need for BPS accreditation. So in both programs you do that. You sit together in the same lectures, no matter what route you're on. And they will become much more different in year 3 because of your dissertation project, which will be a topic in behavioral science or psychology, and because of the optional modules that you pick. There is some possibility for you to pick modules from the other route within a certain range, so you can, even if you are on the psychology route and you're super interested in behavior change, you can still take that module. But there is a limited choice that you have to pick from. And also the other way around. Obviously, if you're on behavioral science, but you definitely want to do clinical neuropsychology, you can also do that. I just give you a very brief idea of the kind of research that we're doing here. And I'll just give you an example from my own research. Sorry about that. Just to give you an idea of an example of the many, many very different things that we're doing here. My research is in face recognition. And if I show you that slide here, I just ask you a question in a second. So what you see here is a slide with pictures of faces, and these are probably 30 to 40 or so different pictures. How many different people are in this slide? How many different faces do you see? How many different identities? What would you think? Wrong. Other ideas? 10? Okay. Other ideas? 4. Okay. So we can probably all agree that this is actually a different task, right? It's not easy to see. What you have here are two different people. It's not a tree. It's not like 36 different people. It's also not one. It's not also not all the same person. These are two different people, but it's actually quite hard to see which image is which person. Now, if you think that these two people that you have on this slide here were your best friends, do you think it would be that hard? It would probably be very easy, right? The reason is that you know what your best friends look like, and you don't know who these people are. These are unfamiliar. These people are unfamiliar to you. There's some photo models that you've seen them before. Familiar faces, however, are, because they are familiar, much, much easier to recognize. So why is it difficult for the brain to do that kind of same task here with unfamiliar faces? And as we imagine, it would be much easier with familiar faces. Why? How does the brain resolve that? I'm a cognitive neuroscientist, and I'm trying to answer questions like that. So you can imagine a very simple experiment in which you just have a participant sit down in front of a computer screen, and you show them many, many different pictures of faces. And one of the people that you have in your experiment is a familiar face, a close friend, let's say, to our participant. And you have lots and lots of different pictures of that person. And you have another identity in that experiment of an unfamiliar person, somebody that your participant has never seen before. And again, you have lots and lots of different pictures of that unfamiliar person. What you do then is, one by one, you show them the pictures on the screen, and you just make the participants watch that. From time to time, you show a picture of a butterfly, and you tell the participant, whenever you see a butterfly, press a key. There's no reason we're not interested in butterflies. The reason is just that you want to make sure that they're actually watching. Right? That they're not staring at the ceiling, that you want them to watch the screen. So when there's a butterfly, press a key. Now, while they're doing that, you're recording their EEG. So you put a cap on their hat with electrodes, and you're measuring tiny little voltage changes that occur on the top of the hat, on the outside of the hat. They're there all the time. We're not implying anything. We're not giving them electroshocks or something. It's the other way around. We're measuring something that is already there. And these tiny little voltage changes, these tiny little electrical changes that you have on your skin, reflect brain activity. They reflect neural activity within your head. It's a great thing, I love that. So what you do, and what it looks like is this here. You have a participant with these kind of caps on. These are the electrodes that you're measuring the brain activity with. They sit in front of a computer screen. You show a picture of a face. Now, what happens when you show familiar and unfamiliar faces is the following. You get brain waves that look a little bit like this here. So time 0 would be the time point when the face appears on the screen. Then something happens here, we're not going into detail. And this here is the brain response to a familiar face, so to our participant's friend. And this here is the brain response to an unfamiliar face. And you can see in the first 200 milliseconds after you present the face on the screen, they're really the same. But here, at this point, 200 milliseconds, a fifth of a second after the presentation, the two lines go in different directions. The brain responds differently to a familiar face relative to an unfamiliar face. It doesn't matter whether it's friend A or friend B or whatever else, you always get the same result. Trust me, I've done that lots of times. And that means that the brain recognizes your face within 200 milliseconds. From 200 milliseconds on, you know that person. Now, what you see at the bottom of the slide here is actually a plot of the difference between the two lines here. And as you can see here, if you look at the difference between familiar and unfamiliar faces, you can see that there are two kind of peaks in this plot here. And the first of these peaks is here within 200, 300 milliseconds. This reflects visual recognition of face, and we have, with lots of other experiments that we're doing here, come to the conclusion that in that later time range here, this is the time when you access additional information about people. So it's not enough usually if you recognize people to know that you know that person. You actually also need to know who that person is, where you met that person before, whether you like that person, etc. And probably this later peak here in the difference curve reflects that. So this is something that we do here. The lab is just over there, downstairs in the department over there. We're measuring EEG responses for familiar face recognition. It's stuff that I do in my research. And it's just an example to tell you, or to give you an example of the basic psychological processes that we're interested in here. And this is a cognitive neuroscience example, interested in questions like, how does the brain do it? A slightly different route into psychology and understanding psychology is the behavioral science way. Behavioral science, as I already said, comes from behavioral economics, and it's kind of applied social psychology. It's taking knowledge from social psychology to tackle challenges faced by, as it says here, public, private, and third sector organizations. It's about understanding and influencing behavior. So a term that people often use is nudging, right? So giving people a little bit of a push to do something slightly differently, which can actually make a big difference. And I give you an example of what the behavioral science team, for instance, has, amongst lots of other things, done here in Durham. This is a study on car engines, people sitting in their cars having their engines running in front of schools or wherever else, and the air pollution that comes from that. And obviously, for environmental reasons, it would be nicer if people would not have their cars running the whole time and switch their engines off. So how can you make people do that? This is an example study from the behavioral science team here, where they set up their little experiment in front of a railroad crossing, where there actually already was a sign that says, please switch off your engines when barriers are down to help improve air quality. And people didn't do that really. And the idea is, can you actually nudge them a little bit? Can you give them a little bit of an additional motivation? And would that make a difference? So what the researchers did here is they manipulated the sign, they changed the sign into something else, and they gave some somewhat different messages. So the first one would be to say, you throw away your money by leaving your engine on when the barriers are down. Well, this is the financial incentive. There's a financial motivation here. Or they would say, warning, pollution, when barriers are down, close vehicle windows and switch off your engine. So this is about health. And it is a little bit more threatening, right? It says, like, close your windows. This is not good for you. Or the last one, think of the children when barriers are down, switch off your engine. This is kind of about kids, about children. And they were seeing whether these signs would make a difference. And here's what they found. In the control conditions, so the standard sign, about 20% of the people waiting at that barrier switched their engines off. And with the financial or health or kin-related modification of that sign, it about doubled, right? So in all these three conditions, about 40% of the people waiting at that barrier switched their engines off. And it didn't really matter what you told them. It didn't really matter whether it was about financial motivation or whether it was health or something. It didn't really, just giving people that little bit of a nudge, this little bit of an additional motivation kind of doubled the number of people who would switch their engines off. It still means that 60% didn't, but it actually improved the situation. This particular example is probably not as relevant anymore because cars switch their engines on automatically now. But in any way, this is just to make the point that you can show that by doing little things, giving people this a little additional motivation, you can actually make a difference. And this is an example of what the behavioral scientists here at Durham do. Now coming back to our degrees and about the teaching and learning techniques that we use here, we have obviously different formats for our teaching. We have big lectures, particularly in the first 2 years. We have small group tutorials and we have practical classes. So when we say we need to cover BPS content that you need for BPS accreditation, everybody needs that. So we teach that in big classes, in big lectures. We have classic lectures with the lecturer standing in front of you, being very engaged and enthusiastic about their topic and telling you all about it. However, we also, across the whole program, always have small group tutorials. In year 1, you have a module that's called Classic Papers, where you discuss classic psychological findings. In year 2, it is called Contemporary Issues, so it's called Contemporary Research. And in these tutorial classes, you will be in a group with, I think, 8 or 10 other psychology students, with a lecturer or a tutor, and you will be discussing in these kind of small group settings. And of course, and we have practical classes. So, for instance, in the first year, there is a module called Introduction to Psychological Research, which is the research methods and stats module, which probably some people might think will not be their favor it because it has this kind of component with, there's numbers involved, and there might be a little bit of math, and there might be a little bit of methods that sound kind of technical. However, we try to do that in a practical way. So when we teach research methods, we are a science, we do experiments, so we let our students do little experiments in this class, collect their own data, do their own analyses, and so have a very hands-on, very practical approach to the whole thing. That makes it slightly less theoretical, I guess, and slightly more interesting. These would be practical classes. We have a similar approach in year 2 in research methods as well. Assessment is both by coursework and by exams. It slightly depends on the specific modules that you pick in year 3, whether they are exam-based or assessed by coursework. Over the first 2 years, we set in the last session, it's probably slightly more exams than coursework, but it will be both in any way. Over the first 2 years, it will be both. In year 3, it depends on the specific modules that you pick. One additional point is that we have really, really nice research facilities here, and for many different areas in psychology, whether that's social psychology, developmental psychology, cognitive psychology, neuroscience, we have, in many cases, really world-leading experts in these fields here, using our facilities here, and we want you to be involved in that. We want our students to actually really come to us, take part in the stuff that we're doing, help us with the research that we're doing, by helping us learning about all these things, learning about how to actually ask research questions and how to actually address research questions and how the whole process then works. I think one of the really, really nice things in Durham is that I think staff members are absolutely enthusiastic about their own research work, and we want students to be a part of that. I always have research students in the lab every year, and I love that. And I think everybody here in the department is like that. So for instance, we have a research assistant scheme. In year 2, we ask students, in addition to the stuff that we're teaching you, do you want to be a research assistant? Do you want to help out a particular staff member in your lab? If you're interested in their lab, if you're interested in developmental psychology, go and work with Professor X, who is a developmental expert. If you're interested in cognitive neuroscience, go and work with somebody else who's doing EEG research, or whatever you want to do. And that's completely your choice. If you don't want to do that, that's absolutely fine. But we would love you to be involved. So you have that option to be profiting from the world-class situation in the lab, in the department here, and of course your dissertation. If once you've been a research assistant, once you've worked in a particular area with somebody, you have learned how to use the equipment. You have already a good understanding of what kind of research questions are asked in a particular field and are relevant just now in that particular field. You might have a fantastic opportunity to run your dissertation there. And that could be your own little research project in that particular area. We have a focus here on employability. We love you to be part of our own work. We love you to be part of the department, but we know that most of you will at some point leave us, right? So you go out into the real world, into whatever you're doing afterwards, and we want you to be prepared for that. And because of that, we have a focus on employability. We have in the department, in first year, there is an optional module that's called Careers into Psychology. Gives you a good idea of all the different career paths that you could go into with a psychology degree. We have additional employability sessions where we talk about, how to structure your CV, how to prepare for an interview, all these kind of things. The university, in addition to what the department offers, has the Careers, Employability and Enterprise Center. These people are absolutely happy to support you with your next steps after university, and we will help you whichever routes outside of, or with whatever route you want to go into after you finish here. We're trying to help you with that, whether that is in a psychological profession, or whether that is in business, or whether that is in something else. Now, our typical entry requirement, or our typical standard offer, is 3 A's at A level, or an IB of 37, or equivalent. Now, when I say it is 3 A's, what kind of subjects do we prefer? Do you need to have psychology at A-level? No, you don't. It's definitely not a disadvantage if you have psychology at A-level, but we will teach you everything that you need to know about psychology here. We teach at university level. If you have it at school, that's great. If you don't, it's not a problem. We want evidence of strength across a range of subjects. I said before, psychology is a science. We have an understanding of psychology being a science. So if you have a little bit of a science background, that's a good thing. However, psychology is also a discipline where you will produce text, right? You have to write essays. So if you have a background a little bit in an essay-based subject, that's also a good thing. Ideally, you have a number of things. You have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And that includes a B or a 5 at GCSE math. You don't need a lot of math here, but you will need a little bit. We're teaching research methods and we're teaching statistics, and that involves numbers, and that involves a little bit of math. And this is why we have this as an additional requirement. So, why should you choose Durham? I think there are three reasons why Durham is a good department. I think we're really a friendly department. Well, I can say that from a staff perspective. We will have opportunity to speak to students how they see that. We have really a nice and friendly atmosphere in the department. We have small group teaching with academic staff members. You will actually meet all these experts that we have here. You will have an opportunity to be in discussion and in contact with all these experts that we have here in the department. And we're trying to support you wherever we can. The department has an Asina Swan Award. We have an academic advisor system, so there will be one staff member that is assigned to you, and you can go to that person whenever you want. Well, drop them an email first and they will make an appointment, but you can discuss with them about your module choices, about the internship that you want to do, about the essay feedback that you had last year. Whatever it is about your academic progression, you can discuss that. The staff members will contact you once a term, will ask you, is everything okay? Do you want to have a chat? But if you want to do something in addition, you're absolutely free to do that, and staff members will be there for you. This person is the same staff member that stays with you for your whole time in Durham, so you get to know each other a little bit, and I think this is very positively seen by students. In addition to what we offer in the department, Durham is a collegiate university, so there's lots of support in the colleges as well. We have a clear focus on employability and skills with skill-focused tutorials, employability sessions, etc. We really want you to be here and involved with the stuff that we're doing here, but we know that you will go at some point and we will have to go and do something else, and we want you to be prepared for that. And we're trying to support you with this. And then the last point here, we really are a world-class department. We have experts in many, many different areas of psychology, whether it's developmental psychology or social psychology or cognitive neuroscience, and we want you to be part of that. We really want you to be part of the department, to contribute to the things that we're doing here. This is everything that I'm going to tell you about us. We can now switch to Nina, who's currently a second-year student in the department, who will give you a little bit about the student perspective here. I'll just switch to that other presentation for you. Okay.
Hi, I'm Nina. I'm a second-year psychology student at Durham, going into my third year, and I'll just be talking to you about my experience studying psychology here. So we've kind of already gone over course content, but I'll kind of just touch on that again. So in years 1 and 2, they're the kind of core foundational modules. I didn't personally take psychology at A-level. I did IB actually. I didn't take psychology, but I found that I could still get kind of my foundation, like my basis in psychological knowledge in those 2 years. So I didn't feel disadvantaged at all. And then in third year, there's a broad range of optional modules that you can choose from. My favourites include criminological psychology, health promotion, and reward and addiction as well. And but there's so many to choose from and loads of different pathways to go into. And it's really good because it caters to a lot of diverse interests and career paths. I have friends that want to do clinical psychology or want to go into criminological psychology or social, developmental. There are so many different routes that you can go into with all these optional modules in year 3. There are also in-person and online recorded lectures. So all lectures are usually in person, but if you do miss a lecture, or if you have an appointment to go to, or if you miss one, they're all recorded and they're online, and you can go back and watch them. I found this especially useful when I was studying for my exams, because if I had to go over a lecture that I didn't quite understand, I could watch the whole thing again with speech and everything, so that I could fully make sure that I understood all of the content. And the combination of summatives and exam grades for each module makes it quite applicable. You can practice loads of different skills, and if you are better in exam taking or better at writing essays, it kind of helps you in that way as well, because you have both options. Regarding staff support, I found that having an academic advisor in my first 2 years so far has been so useful. I go to my academic advisor a lot. In first year it was about changing my optional module from French to careers in psychology, but in second year it's been more about kind of summative feedback and all sorts of things, exam stress, careers, thoughts about anything. They're super useful, always very happy to talk to you. And office hours as well, so for all of the different like module leaders and stuff, they have office hours if you don't understand something that they taught in a lecture, or if you want to ask them a question. You could just visit them in their office at that time, and they'll be happy to talk to you about that, which is really useful. I haven't personally used office hours this year, but I know a lot of my friends have, especially for the kind of statistics part where they help you work through questions and stuff that you don't understand, which is, yeah, very helpful. Regarding the research assistant scheme, I was actually lucky enough to get onto one of those. So the opportunities were posted at the end of my first year, at the start of the summer, and I applied online. There were loads of different ones to apply to. I applied online with my CV and a cover letter, and then got an interview, and I got onto a project on emotion perception with the lecturers Raffaella Heason and Zana Clay. So in my second year, I spent a couple hours a week doing some data processing for them, which was really interesting. I got to work really closely with them, stay in contact with them, and look at kind of real research happening, and got to help them with that as well. And then actually, I got offered an opportunity to do some paid lab work at the end of this year. I've been learning how to do eye tracking, and at the start of next week, we'll start to collect data with that as well. It's been so interesting, and it's actually really helped to build connections between me and other staff members in the department as well, because in larger lectures it's usually harder to form a relationship with your lecturers and to learn about what they really do, but in this kind of research assistant scheme you can really get to know your lecturers and what they're working on and build those connections. And also they award certificates for the research assistant scheme as well, which is really good and looks great on your CV. I'm also doing a Neurify internship, which is kind of external but also relates back to Durham. What Neurify does is it teaches people about DOSE, which is dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin and endorphins, so the happy chemicals in the brain, and how you can kind of harness those to make your life better. And last summer I collated research for this company supporting their teachings, and because they do international speaking. And I've also been building connections between Durham and Neurify. So I've set up meetings between some of the staff members in Durham and the co-founder, and that's been really good to build that network and kind of connect my own internship to the department. They've been really open to that, and they've also said that they could collaborate with me on my dissertation, which I'll talk about now. So as I'm nearing the end of second year, going into third year, everyone's kind of thinking about their dissertations. I'm doing mine with 2 other girls on the effects of TikTok on attention span, body image and anxiety, and my supervisor is Dr. Liam Norman. The research methods I'll be using are skin conductance measures, online attention span and body image tests. And it's been really cool connecting my dissertation to my internship work as well, and the department's been really open to that too. So overall, I really enjoy studying psychology at Durham. I think there's something for everyone in the course because of the specialisation in third year and also the foundational modules in first and second year. And yeah, I'd really recommend it.
Should you leave us today and you think, oh, I should have asked that, do not worry, just send us an email at study@durham.ac.uk or phone us at that number. If you're leaving us today and you want to know what's going on in the department, follow us on social media. We have a Twitter account, we have an Instagram account, and you can also just get an idea of what's going on here with the research that we're doing and students' activities that we're doing, etc.